Welcome everyone to It Matters Radio. This is Monica Brinkman, and joining me today is, of course, Mr. Kenneth Ween.
Hi, folks.
Hi, Ken. We're gonna be hosting today's show. I thought it appropriate to wear my little sunbonnet and my sundress today because summer is going to be here tomorrow, the longest day of the year.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking forward to summer.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well,
Now, you might have noticed.
So I'm not looking forward to it so much.
Yeah, it gets hot in Arizona. You can fry eggs on the sidewalk. I know.
Literally, yeah.
But I want to introduce you all to our guest today. This is Kristin Rebecca.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Kristin, you know, when I saw your music, I contacted Ken right away because this is the type of music that I think more people need to get connected to. I know that you consider it like pop folk, new folk music.
Yeah, sort of like pop folk, contemporary folk. Yeah.
Right, which is a lot different than the older folk music. So I wanted to talk a little bit about folk before, you know, we get into your specifics. I was always drawn to folk music. And, you know, Ken, I think you might have been the same way, but it's because it normally told a story. It had an origin and a completion at the end of the story. Now,
Right.
what I had heard, and please anyone let me know if I'm wrong, that folk music had really originated because people were silenced. They weren't allowed to, like in England and such, they weren't allowed to speak out. So how they communicated was through the little stories they would tell. I think that got into Celtic folk music also, which is completely different. I mean, there's a lot of the Celtic music that has not just, you know, stories in it, but I think it also has fables and tales of fairies and wonderment and that type of thing.
I think folk music really is, you're right, for some music, like of course, the black folk music, and to some degree, certainly some of the folk music, and not only what we call folk, but even like Christmas carols. Some of the great Christmas carols were actually protest songs in their day. But folk is much more than that. Folk music is the sound of the people, whatever people we're talking about, whether we're talking about the Celtic sounds of Ireland and Scotland, which of course then came over here and are found particularly in Appalachia traditionally, but or whether we're talking about the black music, the spirituals. And of course, in case you haven't picked up on it, folks, I go back to a long way to Lomax and a fellow that I actually met, a fellow named Pete Seeger. And, you know, so I go back to some of these people who studied folk music and folk traditions for years.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah. But your music...
Guthrie, Burl Ives, we've got so many, Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yeah.
And I think folk is something that people need to focus a little bit more on. It always, people say, oh, folk's dead, and then it always seems to come back.
Oh, yeah, it's like country western. It doesn't die. It just comes back in new form. But, you know, when I was listening to your music, Kristin, the person who came to my mind immediately, there were two voices that came to my mind, and these are real compliments. Joan Baez was, I guess, you know, then in groups like you, Peter, Paul, and Mary, a lot of that sound too. And I can't blocking on her name, but the woman singer for the Weavers, who was actually somebody that I had gone to a few times to hear her in person. So, you know, you've got that wonderful purity of tone along with an appreciation of the musicality. You know, a lot of times folk music doesn't have the quality of instrumentality because if people are just sharing it and singing it. Now, obviously, some of the folk musicians, and we've been naming a few, brilliant instrumentalists. Pete Seeger, for example. when I watched him play the banjo, God, his fingers could play.
Well,
But
it's amazing.
anyway,
If you go back in time to original folk music, it's amazing the instruments that they used. And that was something that I really, really liked about you, Kristen, is that, yeah, you learned how to play the acoustic guitar and your other instruments, but you went a little bit further.
Yeah.
You decided to try instruments that I guess you had learned from your parents and such. And these were older, like Celtic instruments, correct?
Yeah, my mom plays hammered dulcimer, and I wouldn't say I'm really good at it, but I messed around with it when I was younger. And that's sort of one of the things that got me into harp is I kept plucking her strings on the dulcimer. And of course, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to hit it with hammers. And so then I ran across the harp.
And that was what she wanted. And not that many people use harps nowadays. And when they do use them, you usually just find them in orchestras and that type of thing.
they're a little difficult to carry around from gig to gig.
Yeah, it's been interesting.
I know, but I loved how you used the harp, though, in your Siren's call.
Oh, thank you.
And you don't quite notice it until all of a sudden you're listening to the song and you go, wait a minute, what is that? No, that's not a guitar. And I think that is part of folk music also, stepping out of the box and using what you have to create a sound.
So, who was your favorite source, besides your parents? I know your parents were into music too, but who when you look back on the history, do you have some heroes and heroines that speak to you particularly?
Yeah, so there's a sort of a bit of a broad range, or they all would probably fit into folk and Celtic music, I'd say. So some you actually mentioned, Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell, John Denver. There's a band called Kaylee Rain. I don't know if you know them. They're sort of a Celtic folk band. And then there was a Christian contemporary artist who got me thinking about using unusual instruments in more modern settings. His name was Rich Mullins, and he used the hammered dulcimer heavily in his music. And I was like, well, if he can do that, maybe I can use the harp heavily in music. And so that sort of got me thinking on that train.
And it makes you stand out also from other artists. Because how many people have that ability? Just the fact that you work it in so smoothly. Like I said, I didn't even realize it was a harp at first until I listened and went, whoa. And that's a hard thing to do, to come up with arrangements like that. So,
do you write your own arrangements?
Yeah, I do for all my songs. And then I also do instrumentals, though not as heavily on my albums. And I do all the arrangements for all the recordings that you hear. I mean, I've learned some other people's arrangements, but in the harp world, it's sort of been very much pushed to arrange your own songs and tunes.
And do you write some of your own lyrics?
Yes, everything that I write on Tales, Trials, Truths or Siren's Call is 100% mine, lyrically.
I love the difference. We're going to be playing two of your songs, only one today, but we're going to play another one in the future. But if people would listen to both of these, how different they are. One's called Heartbeat of Life, and the other one's Siren's Call. And I think one is more of a story, Siren's Call. And then you have Heartbeat of Life. And to me, that's more of on the protest message realm, even though you might not have meant it that way.
Well, good music is always, in some sense, protest realm, because good music, good songs, good folk songs, because they're talking about personal experience and they're making the human experience accessible to others. And ultimately, all protest, no matter whether we agree with it or not, all protest is about sharing our experience. And I'm going to just give an example of that. On the 12th day, it's a protest song.
Which one?
The 12th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me.
Oh,
yes.
That's a protest song. People don't know it, but it very much was a protest song. It was sung during the Reformation. It's one of the earliest great example, because it's sung during the Reformation in England as a way of maintaining the Catholic tradition. And that's where it comes from. And all of that stuff in there is symbolic, by the way. And folks, you can go online and look for the lyrics and find out.
I never really thought about that. I
Me neither.
thought it was a nice little song to sing at Christmas.
Good music connects us and connects us to the experience of other people. And as I was listening to your music, I found myself nodding with agreement.
Yeah.
In ideas, and I said, "Oh, this is good music."
Oh, thank you.
So, what would you like people to take away from your songs?
So I'll say it kind of depends on the song. A lot of what I do try to incorporate into my music is a sense of at least hope for the future, hope even in times of present, just that there is still hope left.
Mm-hmm.
And we absolutely need that right now in the world, and we need to have some positivity in here. It just seems everything one after another, boom, boom, boom. You're getting hit nowadays.
In a sense, that's very interesting you say that, because in a sense, that is the basic requirement we have to have in order to have society, in order to have civilization. It's very important to keep hoping. And again, your music does give us that sense of hope. Mm-hmm. Have you been to Ireland or Scotland or even Wales? I mean, to listen to the music there?
Yeah, I got to go to Ireland, I want to say about maybe 6 years ago. Okay. I went to the Republic, so I got to go to Dublin, Kilkenny, Galway, the Rock of Cashel, Aran Islands, all of it.
Did you get to entertain there also?
No, this was just a fun trip.
It was a fun one.
Yeah.
It was the best time anyway.
You get to go to the pubs and be entertained.
Yep. Yeah, we got to do that. We got to see a ton of music in the different pubs.
And it's amazing how the pubs of Ireland are just alive with music. Sometimes it's with performance, so a lot of times it's dance. Mm-hmm. But they're just alive with music. And generally, when I've gone to pubs in England, for example, there's much less music, much more talk. People are talking with one another. And when you go to pubs in the United States, for the most part, the ones I have been to, there's not much music and there's not much talk. It seems almost like there's
what's the word, huh?
The depression. Now maybe it's because I've come in. No, I don't know.
That's it, Ted.
Irish pubs are wonderful for the music.
Oh yeah, and I experienced what you were talking about, where my family and I went in, and someone would just turn around at the bar and just start talking with us. Yeah. I mean, we didn't know anybody there, but they were just happy to start a conversation, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm so glad you got to go there, because I know that that's something dear to your heart, and to actually experience it must have been wonderful. And I'm sure you got to see quite a different variety of music at these places. Mm-hmm. Do you ever just pick up little things that you go, I'm going to try that? Or
Yeah, I mean, I like to listen to different styles of music, and it's not because I'm saying I want to be a clone, but you can learn so much about instrumentation, how people do stuff melodically, how imagery is captured in lyrics, things like that, where you're like, oh, I never thought about someone describing something that way. And then you say, well, I don't want to describe it exactly the way they did, but maybe I can do something similar.
Right.
Well, even when you go to listen to the great classical music, it has a lot of those kind of folk elements in it, and it has it because people singing, sharing their experience, they get all that coloration. There is that a tremendous amount of depth and seasoning. If you were doing a cooking show, we'd call it depth of seasoning.
Yeah.
Season in the songs.
Have you studied music?
Yeah, I have a degree. I have a degree in vocal performance.
Oh.
Yeah, and they also, of course, made us take a lot of music history classes and music theory classes, and I did classical vocal performance, so that slips into my music as well.
Yeah, I find people are sometimes a little surprised when you come out with a different song. Like they might have heard you performing with a harp somewhere. And here comes this next song, they're like, wow. I didn't know that she could do this type of song. And are you going to still continue to do a variety of style, or are you going to focus more on one particular style?
Right now, I sort of just love to call it folk, but then sort of experiment underneath that, because I think folk covers such a wide variety of different kind of feelings and styles that I can kind of play a little bit.
Yeah.
So now, how long you've been doing professionally?
Professionally, about 10 years.
Okay. Oh, so you were in kindergarten. I'm sorry, I asked.
Now she likes you, Ken.
I know you're an adult.
He's been trained, knows what to say.
But now you've been performing for 10 years. How do you, looking ahead, where would you like to go? What would you like to have happening?
Well, I mean, like a lot of people, this year kind of came to a roaring halt for me because of the pandemic. But one thing I had already started in the process of doing is I was submitting to labels, and I sort of was waiting to hear back on whether or not they were open to taking me. I think, given everything, it's going to be a little bit more of a wait, but that's sort of the next step.
Well, good for you taking that step. You never know what they're looking for. And the problem is you never know what songs to submit because...
Now, do you do any internet performing at this point? So, like, we've had, like, recently, Stephen Wrench was on, and he's pretty well known. Besides being a musician, a very fine musician, he's also a manager. And he was saying, people can go on, they can start doing concerts on Facebook. We had a fellow named John Magnuson, who's from Sweden, on, and he's pretty good. And I know he does a lot of he actually makes a living pretty much. He's in Sweden, he's making a living.
And other people are going to parks and things like that.
Yeah. Can our audience find you on the internet that way?
Yes. So I'm pretty much on every popular platform right now. I just started TikTok, even, and I'm on YouTube, which I try to do something at least monthly with that. One of the big things I'm working on right now is I'm working on a new EP that I'm hoping to release this year, and I'm going to probably start the recording process next month to have it all ready.
What type of songs are you in?
So this is going to be a semi-fantasy based EP. Siren's Call is going to be on there, and then it's going to be accompanied. Oh, thank you. Accompanied by six other pieces, some of which will actually be sets because I wrote several original tunes, and so I'm putting them together as a set.
I can't wait for that to happen. You're going to let us know so we can update everyone. But
what are some of the ways people can best redo that? Like you have a website, right?
Yeah, so in fact, that's sort of the central hub. If you want to go to find me everywhere else, I have links to everything on my main website.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's KristinRebecca.com, and I'll just spell Kristen because I know there's like a billion ways to spell my first name.
Actually,
So
that's
it's
the whole thing, because there are a couple ways to spell Rebecca too.
yeah, so it's KristinRebecca.com.
KristinRebecca.com.
I have it open on my other screen right now.
But we'll be sure to have that information.
Yes,
below
we'll
the
have that
podcast, too.
on the list. By the way, Monica, you mentioned that after the show, we're going to be playing one of Kristen's songs,
Yes.
and then there's going to be added later on. But I want to mention this, folks. We live in this very interesting world where we're connecting. Right now, we're connecting using the internet. We're sharing this. Once the show is premiered, we're hoping Kristen will then share it on her website and her YouTube connection. Our primary platform, although we do have a website for It Matters Radio, our primary connection is, of course, on YouTube, where the shows play.
Yes.
And one of the reasons to subscribe, notice how I'm throwing a commercial in here for us, but one of the reasons to subscribe on YouTube is that often we have asked, especially great musicians like I mentioned Stephen Wrench, Bill Abernathy, Kristen, during the subsequent week or maybe later on, we're going to put up another song from them.
Yes.
And if you're subscribing, you're going to notice, hey, wow, there's something new. And that is very positive for us because they have all those subscriptions. But more importantly, you don't miss out on some really good music.
Yeah.
Okay, commercial.
No, I love it, Ken. I think these type of interviews where people get to know the artist a little bit.
Oh yeah.
What drew you to folk music, though? I mean, there had to be one point in your life when you could have gone all these different directions and you said, no, this is what I want. Why do you feel that way?
For me, folk music is really the same reason what you said starting out was it's about the stories. It's about having that beginning, middle, and ending of a story, and it connects so much to people. It's basically like a short story to a song.
Yes. Yeah. You know what I like about it too? It actually continues history that's been long forgotten on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because when you listen to some of the words on these, they might not apply today, but they did, 100 years ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's it's like museum quality, these type of songs.
Did you just put Kristen in a museum?
One of her songs could go in the museum. Because we have to keep folk alive. It's the oldest form of music that we've had on Earth, and except for just instrumentals, drumming and such. Do you always have the harp in your songs?
Yeah, so like when I did my album Tales, Trials, Truths, I'd say there's about half with harp and then half with guitar. So that way there's a bit of a mixture for everyone.
Right. And it's fun trying to figure out which one's which too when you're listening to it.
You started out playing with your family.
Yeah, well, my first thing I started out doing was actually playing in worship bands at the church I went to. And then it morphed into me playing with my family band. And then that morphed into me playing by myself, though I do play with my parents still sometimes.
You on the records at all?
Well, we did a band record called Painted Trillium, and that's out.
I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah. And that's a Celtic CD.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
And do you still do church music?
No, I don't do worship bands anymore. The last one I did, I was in college at another church I went to, and that was for little kids. And then my other music life took over.
That was your passion. That's when you felt comfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that if that's something she would like to return to the worship music, and particularly for the children?
Children's music, yes, but I don't know if it would be the religious kind. I have some ideas for things I think might be good kids songs. I really enjoyed doing the worship music. It taught me a lot, even just musically. And, you know, when you get in front of kids, you have to be highly animated. So that was helpful with someone like me who's a bit of an introvert. It got me out of my shell. But
Now you just, that is not, I mean, you are so wonderfully present in this interview.
I
know,
know,
thank
you
you.
never know. You would never know.
If that's the result of your music and you're working with children, praise.
You know, and I'm often wondering, there must be other musicians in towns where people live right now with this pandemic going on. Why aren't they getting together and like going to a park and playing?
Well, I know.
So many people who are in houses and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I know here, at least where I live in Maryland, we still have rules associated with what we can and can't do. So some of that is people are still staying pretty much indoors.
And it's pretty difficult to sing properly with a mask on too.
It is, yeah, it is.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you're in a setting that's far away from the rest of the people, you know, it'd be great because I mean, there's some people that are doing that, and heck, people would love it because they're bored to death right now. They're tired of watching TV and eating. You know? How many people are not gaining weight? Oh gosh.
I mean, I know for me, the first live show I do have is next Friday, where I'm going to be performing at a safe distance, obviously, from people at an outdoor eating event they're having. And
that's great.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. If we could get things like this going.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an older person, and that's how we got to know bands, to tell you the truth.
Yes.
They would all go to the park, and they would give free concerts, and we kept going back and going. Pretty soon, they're making millions of dollars because they got so many fans by giving these free concerts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just hoping that something like that happens for people right now.
It probably will. I mean, I'm sure there's places that are. Like I said, right now, Maryland seems a little more, I don't know if skitterish is the right word, but more cautious might be the better word.
Thank you. But also, though,
old drive-in, that would even be more perfect.
The drive-in.
We're also, to a certain extent, replacing those concerts in the park, which were wonderful. I love going to them. But I think we're replacing those now with these live internet events. And then, of course, it depends how good your speakers are. So I think one of the problems actually is getting people to hook their sound bars that they use for their televisions, that quality of speaker system, to their computers. I was watching the Scottish play from the Folger Library, and it's a beautiful performance. And but you know, I just was so aware. Gosh, I have to get a better sound system for this computer now. And I think, as people do that, I think that's probably the big drawback. So, folks, I want you to promise me that when you're listening to Kristin Rebecca's music, that you're going to use a good sound system, okay, so you can appreciate it.
Because you do need, because you're going to be listening to this song, and all of a sudden you're going to realize the instruments. It's just going to hit you at one time, and it's amazing. Not everyone can do that. You know? I just wanted to ask, do you think one of the reasons that you chose folk style music, whether it be the Celtic or the new folk or the old folk, was due to the fact that it's pure vocals, pure instrumentals, without any of this tech involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I will say I like pop music too, but I think because I do play harp and I do play guitar, I didn't ever see that letting it go, to replace it with an instrument, more electronic style. I mean, one of those things where like maybe one day I might do a track, but I see myself sticking with live instruments.
Yeah, and I think that's the future anyway. I mean, what else can you do technically? I think people nowadays are starting to want the real deal again. so much of it is faked in the studios now and such that, they're tired of that.
Well, on the other hand, there are people who sing the way I do, and I'm best accompanied by a pheromone. Familiar with that? Kind of
So you're not
But
going
when
to
you
do
have
any
a good
recordings, Ken.
voice, when you have a good voice like Kristin does, yeah, you want acoustic. You don't really want that electronically monitored. Yeah,
You don't need it. Well, folks, unfortunately, our time is drawn to a close, and I want to thank you so much, Kristin, for joining us. And I hope people will check out your website. It's underneath the podcast, but it's KristinRebecca.com. Very easy. And listen to the music. You're going to love it. Don't just think, oh, folk music. I've heard it all. No, you haven't.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful talking to both of you.
Oh, same here. Keep in touch. Let us know what's going on.
Absolutely.
And with that, folks, get ready to listen. And I chose this one first because it depicts the new folk. And this is Heartbeat of Life. Here you go. Enjoy. Bye-bye.
Waking up.